afternoon and welcome. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon for the live webinar with Wealth Assist. I'm joined by Gerard van der Westhuizen, and this afternoon we're going to be unpacking the core principles behind a truly successful property portfolio. We're going to touch on things like cash flow, risks, and what true wealth creation looks like with a successful property portfolio. Gerard, thank you for joining us this afternoon. Now, I think this entire discussion started with the article you placed in the Real Estate Investor magazine. And the topic you wrote about was cash flow positive real estate investments. Now, of course, that gained a lot of traction, and it led us to the webinar, which we actually had on the 17th of March, where we had expert panelists, including yourself. And the topic of discussion on that evening was cash flow positive strategies in real estate. Now, all that leads us where we are today. And what we'll be focusing on today is the demonstration between cash flow positive investments compared to your traditional buy-to-let cash flow shortfall strategies. Gerard, thank you for being with us today. Now, I think for our audience members who don't know who you are, would you like to go ahead and just give us a little bit of background about yourself, what your desired outcome would be for today?
Thank you, Brady. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this afternoon. As Brady has said, my name is Gerard van der Westhuizen, and I'm heading up in the investment side of the Assist Group through Wealth Assist, the company that we have registered with the PPRA and are fully compliant. And my experience over the last 30 years has been a good balance between property investment and the financial services industry. And I must say we've done quite a few things over the years, and my hope is that we can add it all together this afternoon for you to receive some value and understand a bigger picture of how to create wealth through real estate investment.
Excellent. Thank you, Gerard. Pleasure having you. Just so you know, audience, if you have any questions throughout the webinar, please post them in the chat box. We're going to have a Q&A section at the end of the webinar where we'll be discussing all the questions you have. We do want to make it interactive as well. So post them, I will get them through, and we'll hand them at the end. Gerard, perfect. I think you framed the conversation for this afternoon quite clearly. And I think a couple of questions, I had leading up to the webinar coming through, meetings that I've had, and just the broader perspective of real estate investing. It is, people often say that you need money to make money in property, which is, something that's discussed often. Now, my question would be to you, Gerard, is that the case, or is there actually a alternative way, a practical way of going about it without the money you had in property?
Brady, the short answer. If there's one industry where you will need money to make money, this is the one. Let no one fool you. You'll need money. But there is a difference between cash and money. So what makes this one different is that you actually don't need cash necessarily, or so much cash, to make a difference in your investment portfolio. But you will be able to use different forms of finance, which is money, but not cash. And the reality is we make use of the strategy called financial gearing, and we do that on a daily basis. And that's what makes property so different. But as I always tell my children, who's now qualified in their early 20s and or mid 20s, and they're doing quite well, but I said to them, so how much are you worth? She says, what? I said, well, there's a calculation. If you're producing so much income, we can re-engineer it back to what's the capital worth of your current position. And so you are your biggest asset. And that's why the banks will be looking at you, because you personally, with your payslip, is an asset for them, and they will finance you. So there is a strategy available that you can use when starting off in property. And obviously, the bigger your asset value, your personal asset value, linked to your income streams, the more the bank will smile at you. And that's why there is an alternative. But getting into it, when I wrote that article,
Mm.
I took the article and I thought, let me give it to this new AI boxes. So give me a picture of what I've just written down. And this picture for what the trainer will remember this. And it gave me. And I said, remember, at the assist group, we're doing a certain way of generating assets. And there's many people who's actually doing only the left way. And that is long-term financial gearing to actually establish that asset portfolio.
Mm.
And the reality is, if you look at the left one, you will see that it can really burn you in the long term if you don't understand what you're doing.
Mm.
And to the right,
Yeah.
there is a better way in my mind. And I think I will share it to you later. My hope is to demonstrate it with much more numbers than pictures.
Mm.
And I can tell you now that both will lead to the same result, but on different risk levels.
Mm.
And that is the aim of this whole discussion.
Mm. No, that's brilliant. I think you mentioned a couple of things I'd just like to elaborate on and really have a question regarding that. You mentioned in the beginning, you as an individual, you are your biggest asset.
Mm.
So what I understand is the more you make yourself valuable to the marketplace, the better your chances are of having the bank smiling more at you.
Mm.
And then that leads you obviously to your, I would say, borrowing power from the banks. But I think that opens up another entire discussion, because with the money or the funds that you're borrowing from the bank, it opens up some element of risk. Now, I think, for not being an expert, for the, ordinary person getting into financing,
Mm.
the question would be, if you choose the bank as your finance partner, what are the main concerns in terms of financial gearing risk one needs to look at and rather be aware of in your expertise?
So I've mentioned it, all my millionaire friends,
Mm.
they know how to do their cash flows. If you do financial gearing as a strategy, cash flow is the number one aspect that you need to look at.
Mm.
But I think anything that will affect your cash flow in the future, I define as a risk. Anything.
Okay.
And if you miss that and you underestimate or overestimate, you are actually exposing yourself and you're exposing your risk on your investment portfolio.
Mm.
So if we look at the board, presumption of future certainty. In other words, if you think that nothing will change over the next 10 years, the biggest risk side of your investment is the first 5 to 10 years.
Okay.
And if you think nothing will change, well, AI did help us. Only a fool will think that.
Mm.
There's no way that all of it will stay the same.
Mm.
And if you look at the left, you'll understand that variables, things that can change, is interest rate fluctuations.
Mm.
I mean, that's the number one. Up and down, by the way.
Mm.
And because everyone bought when it was low after COVID, and then it went up 4%, and suddenly it's a crazy number that you need to pay in from a short perspective. Body corporates, legal hits, I've heard this many a times. Now you've got 10 flats in one block, and the body corporate comes to you and say, listen, we're going to upgrade the estate. For each flat, you need to contribute 10,000 rand. 200,000 rand or 100,000 rand cash upfront. Legally binding, they can force you.
Mm.
And suddenly you don't have it. But that can happen.
Yeah.
Unplanned maintenance and damages, there's no doubt. I can tell you many stories. It's almost a guarantee. Even if you budget for it, it is in some cases really bigger than what you wanted. I see this, living in the Western Cape, Brady.
Mm.
There's so many agents that are now suddenly the best investment advisors, and they do assumptions on growth, future growth, rental increases, And I'm very concerned about this because I can tell you now the numbers show every time for me personally, they are not conservative. They are over aggressive, and that will affect your risk in the future. So I can tell you without any doubt, there's at least 10 aspects that you need to look at upfront
Sure.
to understand that your cash flow projections of the future is accurate.
Wow. No, I think it's really clear in terms of things that you should look at when making the bank your finance partner, and like interest rate fluctuations, body corporate, legal hits, and the unplanned maintenance and damages. But something that really that is understandable, but over aggressive assumptions about the future and not knowing things that could be a issue down the line, 5 to 10 years. You've mentioned it. I mean, as we know, property is it's an exponential curve. So anything that hinders you in the first 5 to 10 years just prolongs you with an exponential amount of years. But I remember in our webinar on the 17th, you actually mentioned the stress test again, which was a practical way of stress testing your current portfolio, or rather stress testing your personal cash flow strategy against the worst case scenario. Now, I mean, for anybody listening right now or watching, is there something they can apply today or use today to test against their current strategy or position,
Yeah.
which you perhaps can just show us or demonstrate or illustrate for us?
So the wise will tell us cash flow first, capital gain second.
Mm.
So everyone will tell to you, but you'll get the capital growth. But I'm telling you, when you're starting off, start off with cash flow mindset first. And an easy way is one of a legal risk to test if you have a bulletproof strategy. And if I can go onto the next slide just to show you the questions. The first question I would ask, if my rent came in late, just that one little one. I mean, it's a legal agreement. He has to pay the rent. But if he's late, I can warn him. I can put him on terms. I can notify him. But if it's late, will I be able to fund the cash flow for the 2 weeks until he pays? That's the first question. Now, you will not be surprised to hear many of the people in the game start off with, and they don't even think about it. Secondly, the second question, in other words, what happens if that rental did not come in at all?
Sure.
He's unable. So in other words, you were able to fund it from your payslip, your salary income, but now you're not going to be able to refund it or put it back into your cash flow.
True.
What happens now? Simple test. And then the third question I would ask, what happens if this tenant are unable or is unable to pay for 2 to 3 months because he's lost his job? Are you able to handle it? Now we're sitting on a typical flat, 20 to 30,000 and cash flow out of your pocket. How will you be able to fund it? Very simple way. You'll be able to get him out of the flat, which is a different discussion. If he's unwilling, 6 months to evict, the cost of eviction, the deposits that the attorneys will ask you is 30,000 and upfront just to start the process.
Sure.
So the reality is that are you able to handle the shortfall in cash flow? And if you are not able, you must rather stand back and speak to us so that we can help you to build a strategy of protecting the downside. Because I think what is critical on this slide is that little red line. People don't understand that they are in it with the banks until the last payment is done.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter when it goes wrong, until the last payment. In fact, your risk increases with the banks if you have a shortfall late in the period. But the reality is, in many cases, and I'll show you that, from an investment calculation, you're exposed for much longer than 10 years. And that's why it is so important to protect the underlying asset and the agreements with the bank when you start the process with financial gearing.
Yeah. No, thank you. Thank you for that. I think the stress test, you definitely, it's quite a simple, question one can ask themselves, do I have the cash flow, or rather the cash, to mitigate the risk running if the tenant doesn't pay for 2 to 3 months? But you we're leading into the conversation of getting into the numbers, the conversation that the discussion today is all about. But something interesting worth mentioning is, I think a lot of people are aiming for that uh, cash flow positive, but not considering all the money that has been spent for the first 10 or 11 or how many ever years until they break even and start becoming cash flow positive. And what I'm excited to see is the actual numbers behind it till you break even. I see on the slide it was 18 years to break even. Excited to see that. We'll get into that. But I see a couple of questions coming in from the audience members already. If you do have any questions, keep them coming. We will get to that at the end of the session. But Gerard, obviously, like I've mentioned, my role is speaking with investors daily. And something that I keep on getting is potential investors looking to get property, which is immediately, profitable from the beginning. Now, we know it's like a needle in a haystack, trying to find that by yourself.
Yes.
And we know it's not always a reality being cash flow positive from the beginning. I think the question is, from your side, we're getting into the numbers. Could you perhaps just start off by illustrating how that would look being not positive from the beginning, and then obviously showing the figures in a position being like that?
Ready, now we're getting into the number side. I'm excited to start this process, but you made mention of one thing: access. It is a major aspect of property investment. For the ones that's got enough money, getting the right one is the major key. For the ones that hasn't got enough money, getting in is the problem. Because if you don't qualify for R1 million flat, how do you get into property?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a major thing. And what we've established at the Assist Group is the ability to use your capacity where you are in every deal. And you will get to the 1 million. But the reality is we do co-investments and we put the structure together for you so that you can actually get into property investment. Now, the next slide we will look at is the assumptions that we've put together for our example. And you will see that we basically will be doing a R1 million finance deal on both types of investment solutions. You'll see to the left the buy-to-let option, to the right Wealth Assist recovery option, if you see that on our website. Now, the recovery is what we call a buy-to-let on steroids. And if you look at the underlying principles, you will understand why we say that. So first of all, the first line, if we can just go through the numbers quickly: property value of the buy-to-let flat is R1 million, and you get a 100% bond. On the right-hand side, our policy is to never go higher than 75% loan to market value, which means that, we did a calculation on R1 million finance deal, but the value of the property is 1.35 million. So that is a critical aspect because that lowers your risk tremendously. We have found over the years. How much cash do you need? I mean, you will be able, even if you get a 100% bond, you will need to pay the bond attorney, because remember, this is not your primary home. It is an investment. So they will most likely ask you for the cash upfront. On the right hand, the same for the mortgage attorney, and 35,000 for our fee, which is called a external buyer's fee, which is calculated to 1.75% upfront per annum. So total cash in deal, there you will have it, 34,000 versus 69,000. Okay, we used the calculation over 20 years for the bond term and at a rate of 10.25, which was prime. I think it's still prime. I know it's going up. I don't know if people know that. It will most likely go up twice before the end of the year, 0.25%. But that's the calculation. So depending on what you'll get, your numbers will be different. Capital growth, looking at the underlying real averages of capital growth in South Africa, it's much lower.
Mm.
This bubble that we're experiencing in the Cape region
Yeah.
is not necessarily sustainable, and over long term, it actually is much lower. So 5.5 we've used on the buy to let. On our model, 6%, and the reason being contractually, that's what we will pay. It's not a debate. It
Yeah.
is in your in your contracts. So the rental calculation, we've done a 9% for the buy to let, which is typically not a bad rate. I mean, in some areas it's lower, in some areas it's higher. So that's 9% of a million. On our side, contractually, it is 12.25%. Rental income increases, you most likely will have a 7%. We have no increases because it's a shorter term agreement, and we fix those amounts. Calculated expense increase, you will definitely have expenses. Our model is a triple net lease, which means you have no expense increases. Additional cash needed, which is actually additional cash contributions needed. Yes, you will have a shortfall on the numbers on the buy to let. It's just a matter of how much. On our model, you get a net income and there's actually no shortfall.
Yeah.
Tax, you do your own tax, but on our model, we know you're going to be earning profit, and therefore we allow for a 20% tax budget to just compare it, because there's no uncertainty. On the buy to let, you'll pay cash into the future when you sell it. Capital gains is not applicable with us, and you most likely will have to do a capital gains calculation when you sell the property. But if you bought the right one, you don't need to sell it. Right, to the right, rental income calculation then, 90,000 on the buy to let. On the Wealth Assist product, you'll get 122,500 per annum. All right, that's a net payment, and you'll see the calculation. You'll also get in that calculation a capital return of 60,000, which will give you a combined return of 182,500 for the year. On this deal, if you need to pay a bank, we'll deduct it to get the net effect. But on the other hand, you'll get your 90,000. You will have rates and levies to pay for 12,000 for that annum, for that year. Insurance for 3,000 and maintenance and vacancy factor of 4,500. No one allows for it. You have to build up that cash buffer, but they don't allow it. We bring it in. It is actually imperative initially. Maintenance fees 9,000, and so that's not a lot of money. But I can tell you now, one plumber, one electrician per annum, and you're dead. Annual rental before bond is paid is 61,500.
Yeah.
Then you pay your bond, all right, on both sides. The net cash flow for you personally on the buy to let is then 56,297, which means you pay it in.
Yeah.
On our side, you will have a positive cash flow of 60,000. No money is required. And the idea is that the rental income on top, 122,000, will actually be enough to pay, as you can see, for the bond. So there's no cash flow that you need. All right, so just going into the next slide, remember, no FOMO, fear of missing out, no agent, no story. Numbers is the most important aspect when looking at property deals. If the numbers don't confirm it, please don't do it.
Yeah.
Really. I'm a guy that is actually a bit of a FOMO guy. I don't like to miss out. But believe me, I've seen it, and the numbers did not confirm it.
Yeah.
And therefore I know. All right. So when you do, as a principle, before we're going into this wonderful slide, if you do investment planning or calculations, you must do it according to a cash or a capital net value. In other words, if you retire your property, if you own a property and it's 20 million, but you owe the bank 18 million, you are not wealthy yet. You've got 2 million. So the reality, a net capital or a net cash flow calculation is the only way that you can compare investments. Because the reality is there's other types of investments as well. And you need to compare different industries, different segments of the market. And that's why it's so important. And I will show you what this slide is basically saying. So what we've done is to say I see it's a bit small when you stop, but the brown greenish one is your buy to let.
Okay.
And the assumption is that by when will you actually be breaking even and making profit out of this deal? So, and what we've done is we assumed that you will sell it. If you have to sell it for net profit,
Oh.
this is how the numbers will look.
Okay.
And the bottom line is to jump to the end. When we get to the circle, you'll see by when you actually. Now, this is two different types of deals. So the blue block, the cumulative cash contributions. I don't understand why people don't bring this in. If you have a 56,000 Rand shortfall, surely it is a cash investment on top of your 34,000 that you've just put in. And if I get out of the investment, I need to bring that into my calculations.
Yeah.
So the blue tables there on this graph is actually showing you the shortfall over the period accumulative. And by when do I get my cash out? That's the main thing. I mean, you can buy any property. And I always say not every property is an investment, but some are worse than others. And if you go the buy to let route, you will see that you actually get your money back in year 18, which is shocking. No one does that. Everyone do a calculation on a break-even mortgage payment.
Yeah.
But from an investment perspective, you need to do after combined contributions. And the blue is actually showing. So here on this flat, at year 10, the calculated number is 328,000 accumulative that you would have put in to that flat.
Sure.
Now, we're not talking flats that's not nice. It's very nice properties, new ones from developers. The reality is 328,000 you've put in year 10, and then it starts to turn. So the second thing that I need to, so in other words, the blue is there for you. So the second gray, the gray one, is that what it is? The net profit on sale is you selling your profit. You're selling the property, and that's what you'll be getting out. So you will always see that there is a bit of cost. Capital-wise, you get a return. But when I deduct my contributions, my cash contributions, to get to that profit after cash contribution, which is the red one, you will see that in the first couple of years, you will be positive, but it's not a good answer. And the next slide we'll do the numbers just to show you, but I want to establish the principle.
Yeah.
In other words, if you look at the net profit, the green gray one, versus the red one, you will see even in year 16, after deduction of my contributions, although I've received now all my cash back, from that point onwards, you will actually have much less out than you think. And that's why my exposure from a net combined contribution perspective, plus the profit that I'm making on the sale of my property, is actually kicking in much later in the process. And if I'm an investment planner and I'm sitting with you and I'm planning for your retirement in 20 years, this could be a problem because for the first 18 years, you're exposed and you're not making money yet. Well, not real money. It's only after that point. So what people must understand is if you're using financial gearing, on the long term, you will make money because you would have established that asset. And any investment planning is all about establishing capital or property that is seen as capital to provide an income. And that's a net calculation of capital. So, and the reality then is we look at the wealth assist side, and you started off same model, same exposure, and all what is different on our side is every second year, or you even sometimes in a year, but every second year we've done the calculation. You go into a new deal. You're in and out, you're making profit, and you're reinvesting, and you're going into a new deal using the same capacity that you would have had in any case. But the reality is, you will see that every time, if I have to get out unexpectedly,
Yeah.
you will make profit. You have a positive return on our model. If you get out on the buy to let model, in the first 6 years, you will see it's very little profit. You're not making money. Now, that is the game that we play when we go buy to let financial gearing, which is not a problem, but people don't understand it. Because if you bought a flat in 2017 and 2020 hit you, now 2020 was something else.
Yeah.
But I've been through, when I bought my first house, I don't know if people, now that's my age, but the reality is the interest rates went up to 23%. Now, if you buy a house on a budget and it went, I can't remember if we signed, but it went up tremendously, about much more than a third of the bond payment.
Sure.
It actually creates, so if you bought it in 2018 and something went wrong and you needed to sell, in the first 3 to 4 years, you would have made nothing
Sure.
on cash contributions,
Yeah.
which is part of your investment. So what we're saying is, over the long term, the cash generating model of taking profit on deals is actually, in the initial stages, much more lucrative in the long term. And then what we did was we asked, but if you're using our model and you would have had a shortfall, all the blue ones, please give it to us. Well, not even to us. Put it in your savings account at 7% per annum and add it to the investment numbers, because it's a cash investment. Very low, very conservative, but you would have had it as an expense in any case. So the reality is, then we add it, and then you'll see the wealth assist plus the cash contribution green line, which is then outperforming the buy to let model by far.
Yeah.
Right. So there could be a lot of questions on this. I'm excited to hear them, but let's look at the numbers. That was the picture, people. That was the picture, people. Now we're looking at the numbers. And just looking at year two, for getting the information on one page, we just did every second year. So year two, you sell, you have a net profit on your property of 57,780. But you did put in, over the 2 years, 108,000 already.
Yeah.
Now, just think about that. Young people starting out saying, I'm going to rent and I'm going to buy an investment property. You've added 108,000 cash from your salary into this investment, which means if I deduct your shortfall, you will have, after 2 years, a loss still of 510 rands. So in year four, it becomes a bit better. And if you have to sell, taking off your contributions of 198,000, you will have a positive return of 16,800. But then I would have said to you, but listen, if you took the 198,000, just put it in a savings account at the bank, you would have had much more than 16,000 rand. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So if you understand that over the short term, you cannot get out, which means you cannot buy something that doesn't work, possibly. You cannot make a mistake in terms of assumptions of future growth, rental income, future capital growth, because you are in it for many years until the day. Now, what the guys will tell me now, the clever people in buy-to-let environments, they will tell you, but we're breaking even much quicker. And I'm saying to you, yes, you are, but that actually requires more cash. And we're speaking to people who hasn't got that much cash. And if you are that one, you would always have to do the calculation by saying, what could I have earned on my cash in any case? And even if I contribute and gear myself and pay the shortfall, I can afford it. I'm earning well. That's no problem. but you need to do a calculation on the blue block,
Yeah.
on a separate investment account. So that's why we're saying, the net profit after your cash contributions only becomes viable in the long term, year 19 and 20. So it's not a problem. That was the aim initially. Our aim is to get to 20 years and have that asset 2.85 million built up, paid off cash, and all my money is now back. Looking to the right, Wealth Assist, net profit on sale. Remember, we have a positive return from the year one. So every time we do another one, we're adding more cash on it. So this is the reality.
Yeah.
After 20 years, where you would have had a property, in the column to the left, 2.684 million. To the right, you would have 4.15 million. And that's after the 20% budget has been applied. You still had your money that you would have contributed to your buy-to-let, put it in a savings account,
Yeah.
and you will have, just, conservatively, 1,045,871. That's your cash portion in your savings account. Your property portfolio with us, well, it could be your money on trust with the attorneys, because we never receive cash ourselves. It always goes to the attorneys, is 4.1 million. And if we combine the two together, over 20 years, you would have had 5.19. And it's the same exposure with one major difference. You have no cash flow. I mean, you don't have to contribute from your salary ever. So in my mind, at least you need to look at the long-term picture. And we've done this, and I'll show you now. This was, by the way, one guest speaker showed the numbers, and he said, okay, so let's do the numbers. Where are we going?
Yeah.
And even if you have 10 properties, the model stays the same. So you might say, but I'm fine with the first one. And the minute you add the second one in year 3, the third one in year 5, I want to expose myself. So I have no problem whatsoever. This is the model. But if you understand the downside, you must understand 7,729 times 12 is your shortfall. The third year, 12,968 times 12 is your shortfall for that year. If we calculate all the red numbers times 12, you would see that the model is still the same if we look at this slide. It's the same. Even scaling it, your cash contributions to your investment portfolio must come out. Otherwise, the investment structure doesn't make sense. And you need to make a net capital and cash on hand calculation so that you can say, well, now I've got my 10 properties paid off after 20 years, but is it still the best investment? And the irony of it all is, if you're getting a net return of 7 or 8% or even less, as many do, it doesn't make sense to stay in property. Then you take your capital and you give it to Wealth Assist first, because you get 12.25% per month, except apart from your capital. Or you put it into other structures that's actually much more lucrative than a net 6%. And that's what we do from an advisory perspective. So that is a lot of information. I know I've just thrown you under it, but I think what one needs to understand, if you do this, it's a long-term approach. And it is definitely not something that you must mismanage, because if you have an issue in year 15 from a cash flow perspective. So the one guy, I always use this example, he phones me up and says, listen, I'm 24,000 Rand per month short on my 5 flats, maybe 6. I says, yes, I'm funding it from my business. I says, well, did you sign personal surety to the company that owns the property? And he said, yes. I says, okay. Any other property? Yes, the 2 in my own name. Paid off, cash. My mother's in one and I'm in another one. I says, what? your structure. So if you default on one of those flats,
Yeah.
the bank will not come for your company. They will come for the personal surety and they will go for your 2 flats. After your 2 properties, that's paid off.
Yeah.
So your exposure towards the end of your transactions or your investments is actually critical to understand and to avoid sudden mistakes. And can you imagine losing his own property plus his mother's property that they are living in, that he has given them? So it is really important to look at your cash flow, your risks, and understanding how far. If you are one of those guys that say, I have no issue paying at a shortfall, I say it's no problem then.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but there's very little of us that actually have no considerations ever for shortfall payments or bank exposure in the 20 years. So maybe I should just give it over to you from here.
Yeah. No, Gerard, thank you. And I think, well, the numbers are quite clear, and I think it makes a tremendous amount of sense when you actually show the figures and you know, compare the two, specifically on your traditional, you know, the buy to let, where you're having that, you know, shortfall, not only until you break through on your mortgage, you know, shortfall, but when are you actually recouping the amount of money that you put in from the beginning? And that was only on month 18, if I have it correct, month 18, 19 over there.
Year 18, yeah.
Year 18.
Yeah.
Thank you. Year 18. So my real understanding of this is it's not just really about owning assets. Like you mentioned, if you're getting 7-8%, you know, per annum, then it's better to take your money from the property and either give it to Wealth Assist to manage that, or then look at alternative methods, alternative investments. But I think a question then really is, how can I be sure to achieve my long-term investment goals in property? Um, you know, or anyone really invested in property already? How would I be sure that, all right, listen, Gerard, oh, you know, I have X amount of property, I have this amount of equity available, or I'm just starting out and I say, I want to have I'm looking to retire in 10 years from now. This is the amount of, you know, monthly income that I need.
Mm.
How can I be sure that that is what I want? That is what I am going to achieve in the next 5 to 10 years is the real question. I think a lot of people are sitting with that question. You know, how do I actually achieve my goals, and what would be the best route to go to get there, and to know this is what I'm doing?
Well, Brady, let me
Gerard?
just throw this on the board. You must be sure of what you want to achieve.
Hmm.
And therefore, you need a plan. And
Sounds simple.
it's not going, standing next to your bucky, taking out a cardboard and doing a couple of figures, like we did in the olden days. We'll do a deal. No.
Mm.
This is real estate.
Mm.
There's banks involved. There's cash flows involved.
Mm.
There's underlying costs involved. You need a plan. So what we do at Wealth Assist is we look at what your goals are and we plan for it.
Yeah.
And you will see your balance sheet, your total net property asset value there in the middle. We'll add the assist portions because we are earning much more on the short term. A combination of the two allows you to subsidize the shortfall on the long term.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And if you want to buy long term properties, which you are unable to find, well, the bulk of our clients, some of our clients actually have the skill and they have brilliant deals.
Yeah.
But when you speak to them after 5 years, they say, I'm tired now. Can you just diversify a little? But the reality is we combine the two and then we say to you, okay, so this is your total net asset value.
Yeah.
And how are they comparing towards each other so that you can actually see, maybe I should sell those 3 flats. It's not making the returns that are my ROI that I need or that makes sense anymore because I've got alternatives now. And then the other important thing is that we look at your cash flows. So you want to retire at that age in so many years at 60,000 Rand a month. Oh, are you sure you're going to achieve it? Because can you imagine getting to year the 1 year before you retire. And you suddenly realize, oh my hat, I have not achieved the capital base through property that I need to provide me with the income at 60,000.
Sure.
And we find that a lot. There's no doubt we find that a lot. So the idea is we don't go much longer than 20 years, but the reality is I will show you your actual income in 20 years. From both portfolios, both type of strategy, anything else that you want to add, we can actually go into it and show you this is your net cash flow that you will be receiving, divided by 12 and say, oh, you're safe or you're not. And this is the answer. And I think, looking at the numbers in a picture again, in this client's portfolio, we just did the comparison to see if he's given us all the money, or let me rather put it this way, if he's given us $1 million and he's got $1 million in his own portfolio, or 10 million or 20 million, how's the comparison looking like? And you will see here on a net asset value, the capital that we're creating. It seems that we have a much lower line with Wealth Assist, but the reality is we have half the risk. And I'm saying half, it could be much less than half. So you're taking a risk. That's why you should be having a much better capital growth from a net perspective. And if we look at the cash flow side of things, you will see because of the higher income that we're generating, you are definitely better off starting off with us. And as I said, the first 8 to 10 years is actually the biggest risk of your portfolio. Because as a good friend of mine has shown me, they've got a couple of properties in the first 11 years. I'm talking 3, 4, 5. First 11 years, flats. And then suddenly, over the next 3 years, they acquired another 35.
Sure.
And I said, how did you get that right? Because ultimately, they could scale. And they understood that the first decade, they need to establish that foundation. So property in the long term allows you to scale. And unless you're earning, unless you are the biggest asset, not the property portfolio, in other words, paying for itself, you are putting extra cash in. And then we do the other numbers and say, listen, okay, it makes sense. Put in more cash and lower the risk in terms of your exposure. But in any case, adding it into the portfolio will show you clearly that it makes sense to do so. So this is what we offer to make sure that people don't go in blindly. Even if they bring their own stock to us, we bring it into our planning session.
Oh, that's brilliant. I think also, what you mentioned is your friend that started out in the first 11 years, having the 3, 4, 5 properties and being able to scale to 34 properties is really having the proper foundation in place. Now, that's also, as we've mentioned, having the correct plan in place. And that's obviously, as we've now seen with the demonstrations, that Wealth Assist actually takes your current portfolio, plans it out, and shows you, as the numbers show us, and numbers don't lie, how the potential outcome would be for you, or the outcome would be for you over the next couple of years. I think, Gerard, that brings us to the end of this webinar, where we will have the section now for the Q&A. And I just see that my access to the questions is not accessible right now. So we'll just grab the questions over here from the team.
Maybe I can just, while you're getting the questions, reading it, let me just quickly show you. This slide we've used in the webinar. And people will come to us and say, listen, I need to get into student accommodation. I need to get into Airbnbs, multi-lets and so on. So our founder, Daniel Lombard, created this sheet for you to understand. Even if you go into subsections and sectors in property, you must understand your numbers. And looking at the different segments, sectors, looking at how much cash you need to outlay, looking at the actual returns, what they are offering you, understanding the different cash flow shortfalls how you can fund it, when there's actually no income, student accommodation. Sometimes there's people who's got 10-month contracts and not 12 months. That all those small little things determines your net returns on these property segments, sectors. So even when they come to us and they say, listen, and we've got it, we've got two student accommodation underlying properties at the assist side, and and then you can compare the outcomes, because some people will go into Airbnb, and as we have now heard, that the rates will actually not even double, but go higher very soon in Cape Town. And now suddenly that whole model on your assumptions has changed. So just be sure, never go into something that you haven't researched, or speak to someone that has got information on it so that you can be sure of how your numbers work out. What's the question?
Gerard, we have a few extremely well thought of questions here. And I think one listener and viewer actually has a couple of questions that I think overarches over the other questions that we have. So I think, Gerard, I'm going to shoot them one by one to your side. A couple of them are fairly straightforward, and a few of them are a bit more intricate. But Eugene had a couple of questions over here, and he appreciates the clarity and the practical structure of a typical wealth assist deal. The first question he had is, who buys the property? So I think he's referring to a typical wealth assist investment, and the question is, who buys the property?
So all our deals that you will see on my mail, I've got my title there, not as Chief Investment Officer, but as a Direct Real Estate Investment Officer.
Mhm.
Because when I started here with Wealth Assist, I said to them, direct real estate. And our marketing people created that signature for it. So, because I said, direct real estate is the answer. So firstly, you do deals with the real estate owners, the sellers, and you as an investor buys it. So most of our deals is directly, there's no structure for it. Where we have a deal that is too expensive, too big, and we need multiple investors to do it, we put a property company in place, and you do the deal proportionately to what you are able to. So the reality is that there is other structures. But 90% of the deals that we do is actually directly in your name, and we transfer the property into your name. So just be clear on that. And we've got another session where we actually explain all our different products, because you will clearly see it is something different, and it works. Over the last decade, we have proven that it works. And the risk that we couldn't address is we are now addressing. We learn from the mistakes or scenarios that we couldn't look at in the past, but have experienced. We know that it is in your own name the best.
Excellent. Yeah, that handles it. I think, just another question here. We have time for a few more. I think this is a big one because I see it coming up quite a few times here. But who funds the deposit, if there's any deposit on the transaction, costs, and any shortfalls? Who would fund the shortfalls and the cost of deposit, etc., in the transaction?
Well, on the buy to let, you know that you will fund it.
Yeah.
On our structure, because we have a zero shortfall calculation, there's no all the costs. So what we do is, because we are assisting real estate owners that are in trouble, we structure most of the cost into that deal to raise the capital. So if there's a cash contribution from your side, it's most likely because the bank says, I'm not giving you 100%, or and when you have to pay some of the fees up front. But there is ways of looking at it and overcoming it. But in most of our deals, because we're doing only 75% of market value, from a loan perspective, there's a solution for that.
Excellent. Yeah, sure. There's quite a few questions, but
there's one question that the lady actually asked on the web, and I wanted to. So she was actually asking, So are we not ripping the people off? Because I mean, we're clearly asking 12.25%. So if you do remember the calculation,
yeah,
the 122,500, if you calculate that as a percentage of the value of the property, which in our case is 1.35 million, a flat of 1,350,000, the income is 122,500.
yeah,
It is 9%.
gotcha.
So the real estate owner who's signing a lease agreement, if he would have sold his property with the banks, lost a lot of money, and signed a new agreement for the same unit
Mm,
next door,
mm,
he would have paid 9%. And therefore, in his mind, he's saying, well, I'm not losing out. I would have paid it in any case because the value of the property is 1.35 next to me, which is my neighbor.
mm.
So no, we're not ripping them off. We are actually assisting them with a lot of stuff that they can't do, and they're not paying that much for it.
100%. Thank you for that one. I see that's one that's definitely a great question. There's about 4 minutes left. I think we can handle, if that's fine,
Let's go.
one or two more questions. In terms of the management of the property and the tenants themselves, who does that in the wealth assist model? Because I believe
Yes.
this person is
Very
referring
good
to-
question.
Yeah.
So because we have the real estate owner and the investor on both sides, and we need to look at it from that perspective, we actually had to put the full management structure in place. So I think, from a maintenance perspective, rental management, all those things that come up, agent selections, selling it, all those things are in place. So you have actually no maintenance or management of the property itself. You will not get a phone call from the plumber because we insure the property and pay the insurance where applicable. Even on life insurance, at worst case scenarios of death, there's life insurance in place so that we can settle transactions in the estates. But the reality is, and that's why people come to us, by the way, big portfolios, and say, okay, I'll give you 5 million because on this 5 million, I'm not managing anything. There's no stress for me. I just get the feedback. This is what happened. And because we have a triple net lease, there's very little cost that pops up during the investment period.
Excellent. No, thank you. Let me just see here. Okay. Yeah, I see quite a number of people are asking regarding our services and products, which of course, that there's separate.
Yes. So on that, I mean, that
Yeah.
where you maybe on the last slide, you'll see there's a QR code.
Yeah.
That's, you see the beautiful one in the room next to me. HP Pro Beauty, or what's that? Scan the QR code,
Yeah.
make a booking with him. It's a
course.
quick call. You can go directly into his diary and just set up a time where you can actually speak to him about the different products. Believe me, it took me 6 months to understand them. It's different terminology and so on. And because it's a cash-driven model, I mean, a cash profit taking, it really is something that we need to explain in more depth.
Excellent. Yeah. Like Gerard said, to book a call, simply just scan the QR code on the screen, which we'll have up there in just a second. You can scan it, book a call, 20 minutes. We can have a chat about your current strategy, your current investment portfolio. If you're just starting out, questions like how would you be getting financing, what the different routes is to get there. And then, we can have a chat and we can conclude with any questions you might have. Gerard, yeah, I think thank you. I believe this webinar was extremely and incredibly insightful for everybody watching, and for me as well, and for everybody that will still be watching it. And I think one of the biggest takeaways that I have here is it's that successful property investing is not just about buying assets, but it's about understanding how to manage your cash flow, how to protect the downside, having a proper strategy in place to really be successful in property, and analyzing your current position, with an expert by your side. So I think in closing, is there or no, is there? What is your final piece of advice or something you want to leave the listeners with from your side.
So we live in a world of quick fixes. And let me be clear, property is not a quick fix. But what it will enable you is to, over a much shorter term, create the capital assets that you need to achieve your financial income goals. So it is a journey. Brady, it's a journey. I know your generation wants it now, but my generation has seen over the years some things take longer. And I can tell you now, start the journey, get your plan in place, and let's help you to see the numbers and at least be the voice in your ears when you make property decisions. I think we can add some value. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Gerard. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for this afternoon's live webinar session. Thank you for tuning in, and thank you for all the brilliant questions you had and have. And like I've mentioned, if you haven't scanned that QR code already, please do so. I'd be happy to chat with you or somebody from our team to get into touch and really break it down to its simplest form on what the next best steps is for you. I want to thank you. Have a beautiful day further, and we'll catch you on the next webinar. Thank you.